Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the type of equations you will see on STAAR and how you can manipulate those equations to still be able to use your Desmos calculator to see what these things look like if you actually graph them out. So the first kind, of course, you will see ones that are already in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, but those you can graph, so I haven't included them here. These are ones that we actually need to do something with or change. So this first one, you'll notice if you check your STAAR cheat sheet, is under linear equations as standard form. The graphing calculator, and you'll know you're in that one because it says right here, Texas grade 8 EOC math, right? This is the test calculator. It's the one that's built into the STAAR. It will not graph in standard form. So if you go and you try and you say, okay, well, 3x minus 4y equals 12. It's just going to give you this little symbol, right? Because plotting implicit equations and inequalities is disabled, so you can't do it that way. However, you can graph it in slope-intercept form. When we talk about slope-intercept form, I want it to look like this. So if you'll remember back to when we did this, we did both during the systems unit and during our original linear equations unit, we talked about how you can move things around to solve for y. We want to leave y all by itself over here. So look at what's over here that shouldn't be here. Well, my x's are supposed to be over there, so I need to make them go away. The beautiful thing about algebra is I can do whatever I want as long as I do it to both sides. All right, so now my equation says negative 4y equals 12 minus 3x. No, it's not in perfect form as it should be above, but this works in Desmos, and I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. So now we're closer to having a y over here, but I have negative 4y. And remember, this means negative 4 times y. So to undo it, I'm going to divide by negative 4. And I have to do the exact same thing to both sides. So now I'm left with an equation over here, hoping you can still see the edge of my paper, and you can, that says y equals 12 minus 3x over negative 4. This you can graph in Desmos, right? Not as pretty as I would like it to be for slope-intercept form, but it works. So let's try it. Y equals, I have 12 minus 3x. And if you want to divide all of it, you have to highlight all of it, slash divided by negative 4. And now I'm given this beautiful line over here, and now I can find all sorts of information, right? Cannot be graphed, can be, right? It has to be in y equals mx plus b form. It must say y equals on one side. Now, another cool thing you can do here is if you click on the little gear up here, that's all I did, and go to the equation you wish and say create table, it will give you points on this line. This is really helpful when you're trying to match a point that's given in a question, or if you're trying to match a table, and we'll look at some examples of that as we go. It's just pretty helpful. You can also change or add things to it. So if I had one that said, what is y when x is 50? I can come and put in 50 and it will tell me y would be 34.5, right? If I said, what if x is 5, right? Closer. It would tell me y would be 0.75. I can add by pressing enter, say what would it be at 12, 18, etc. You get the point, right? This table is really helpful. Again, you get to that by pressing this gear button up here, and then you just choose the little table button right next to it. And that way it creates your table based on that specific equation. Notice that the colors are the same. You can turn the dots on and off like that. You can turn the line on and off like that. Okay, so that's it for standard form. You need to get them into slope-intercept form, and then they can be graphed. Let's look at the next type of equations. Let me go ahead and clear out my calculator. Okay, the next kind is where, right, like this, we have x squared minus 4x equals 100. You can graph just x squared, but once you start putting in everything else, that equal sign you'll notice is going to throw a wrench in your plans. Suddenly, it cannot graph that anymore. You can't graph with an equal sign right in the middle. What you can do is set this equal to 0 and then graph on your own. So here's what I mean by that, right? This you would use if you see equals something thrown in there, and it's usually done with quadratics, which you'll know it's a quadratic because of that x squared. So the way I take care of this is I want it to equal 0. Well, right now it equals 100. How do I make 100 go away? Let's do minus 100. And as long as I do the same thing to both sides, that's totally fine. And now I have x squared minus 4x minus 100 is equal to 0. Now the key here is you don't graph that part. It's equal to 0, we don't need it. So now let's try that again. Now I have x squared minus 4x minus 100. And now I can graph it. Make sure to see the whole thing to go back to default and then zoom out so you can see. And I can see right here, it is a quadratic. I can find my minimum. I can find my vertex, right? Click. My minimum is this line that goes through here at the bottom at 104, negative 104. My vertex is 2, negative 104, which means my axis of symmetry is this line at 2. I can find my y-intercept. I can find all of my fantastic key features of graphs. So again, if you set it equal to 0, you can graph it. If it looks like this, it will not let you graph it. All right, let's look at the next type. So let me clear out my calculator again. If you see one like this, same problem, it has an equal sign. It's not going to graph. I won't even type the whole thing to show you. You know it's not going to work. I also know I don't want to try adding and subtracting and distributing and all that stuff because that's a lot of work too. What I can do is, this is like a systems problem, right? This one is equal to this one. I can just graph each of them separately. So let's try 2x minus 4. And that graphs, I can't see it right this second, but that squiggly line tells me it's somewhere. So let me press home and see if I can find it. There it is. And now I can graph the other half. Negative 4, parenthesis, x plus 10, close my parentheses, and there we go. Now, you want to go and find the intersection, right? And Desmos is really good at showing you all those things. So if I'm trying to solve it, and it doesn't matter what language your test is in, it could be in Russian. If it's an algebra test and it shows 2 lines crossing, your answer almost certainly has to do with the point where they cross. In systems, it's the point where they intersect or cross. In this one, I was trying to find x, because x is my variable. So you just go to where they cross and look at your x value, and it's negative 6, because this is, because this is an x and this is a y. X equals negative 6 is your answer in that case. All right, if you plug negative 6 into here and negative 6 into here, you'll realize you get 16 on both sides, and they are indeed equal. So the solution to that is negative 6. So looking at what we did there, just so you have it. Graph this one. Graph this one. Once you do, all right, have your graph. You're going to have a line that looks kind of like that, and then you have a line that looks like that, and then to figure out what you need to figure out, you come here to where they meet, and this gives you a point, and this is your answer. X equals, in the case of this one, it would have been negative 6. All right, so that's how you deal with these equations. All right, the last one, the one that you see, it has x's and y's in it, so I'm including it on the list, but it's not an equation. There's no equal sign. There's nothing else there. These are your, move it up just a little bit. These are your ones that usually say which of the following is equivalent to this, and we already know our equivalent trick. So equivalent means I can't do it with x's and y's, right? It must say the word equivalent. Or it can say they're equal, but usually they use the word equivalent, and it must be multiple choice. And if it says equivalent in the question and it's multiple choice, then you can use your little trick. You can change all of your X's to A's. You can change all of your Y's to B's. And then you can use that little trick where we put in this original one plus your answer choices. All the X's are changed to A's, all the Y's are changed to B's, and you can say A equals 1.1. And then you can say B equals 2.2. And then you can find the ones that match. And you know, because they match, they are equivalent or equal. All right. So using some of these skills, we're going to look at some STAAR questions. All right. So let's go ahead and open up some STAAR questions. These are from an older STAAR. Okay. So let me go ahead and clear out my calculator and let's look through this. All right. So this one is a graph. It wants to know the intercepts. That's great. That's my key features. Not really what we're practicing today. Here shows linear relationship. Boy, that's a whole lot of information. Note when you come back to it, it says rate of change. This is just a slope question. It wants to know what is the unit rate or slope. Rate of change tells you. You can figure that out. That's a skill for another day. Right? Keep going, looking just for ones that I can graph. This looks like a great one. A system of equations is graphed on the grid. Which system of equations is represented by the graph? In your calculator now, go ahead and graph each of these and figure out which one it is. I will warn you, right? You need to look at things like where is the y-intercept? It's at -5, -5, but two of these answer choices have, sorry, I said y-intercept, the intersection of the two lines. Two of these answer choices both have an intersection of two lines at -5, -5. So don't just look at that. You also need to make sure they intersect the y-axis at these points. You have y-intercepts of -3 for one line and -8 for the other. So that gives you 3 points to verify that you have the right answer. So at this time, go ahead, pause the video, graph them all, and resume when you're ready to check. Pause the video now. All right, in this case, you should have seen that your answer was right here, B, at 2/5 x minus 3 and -3/5 x minus 8. Several of them look pretty similar, but the only one that has an intersection of the two lines at the point -5, -5, as well as y-intercepts of -3 and -8, which all match our original graph, are the equations given to you in choice B. All right, let's look for another one that we can try. How about the solution to this system of equations? Because these look just like the equations we did in our example 1. We've got to convert them. They're in standard form. So let's start with my first one. I have 2x plus y equals 40. Well, if I want it to just say y equals, I need that 2x part to go away. So let's do minus 2x to both sides. And now I have one of my lines. I don't see it, but that squiggle tells me it's there. So let me use the home key and scroll out a bit. There it is. All right, let's look at the second one. So the second one is x minus 2y equals -20. And, oops, sorry, -20. And I need to rearrange this. So I need to go ahead and change this to slope-intercept form, which means it needs to say y equals. So let's subtract x from each side. That's close, but it still won't graph it. I need to divide everything by -2. Now, you can either do that on each individual term. That's totally fine. I would highly recommend you make sure that your signs stay in the right place. Sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. I like to put it under the whole thing, because it's just a little neater that way. Once I've divided by -2, it can go away from that side, and suddenly I have it. And what I'm looking for now is the intersection of these two lines. In this case, the two lines intersect right here, and as long as I have converted them to slope-intercept form correctly, I can see that my answer choice is 12/16, which is A. All right. There are several others you can try. So I would highly recommend you go onto the TEA website. I'll show you how to get to that in a minute. Here's a good one to try. Pause the video and try this one. You're going to graph each of your answer choices. You do not need to include the P of X part. Just graph this part on this side of the equal sign. And then look at your intercepts and all of your information and see which one matches. Go ahead and pause the video now and then resume when you're ready to see the answer. All right, after you graphed all the answer choices, you would have seen that C actually went up like this, so it wasn't that. D also went up like this, so that was not the answer. Those are both growth, and this is decay. The other one that was pretty close was B. Although B had a different y-intercept, it actually went through 2, and I can see in the picture that it needs to go through 1. The only one that does that and shows decay is this one here, so my choice is A, or in this case, yeah, it's an A. All right, some other questions that might be good to try. I'm just going to scroll down to. All right, this one is a bit trickier, right? It says it shows a system of linear equations represented by line H and line J. You'll notice they did not graph both of them on the same graph. They didn't give you tables for both of them. One's a table, one's a graph. These are different lines. They want to know which system of equations represents them. What they're really looking for is which one of these matches the line. Let me scroll out a little bit. And which one matches the table. I would recommend you start with the line because it's the most straightforward. So you would take each of these. I'm just going to show you one, and I'm going to leave you to practice. So let's say we have 4/3 x minus 5. And the other line, the other equation for this one is 4/5 x plus 1. And I want to look at that, and I can see they meet here up in this first quadrant. That does not look like this at all, right? It's not even going the right direction. These are positive slope. I need a negative slope. That's a nice negative. This one's puff, puff, positive. So I would immediately eliminate F and G because those are all positive slopes. You can save yourself some time if you can cut out answers that way. You're going to try H and J. You need to be sure that they include the points that are given, because while it looks like it touches one, it actually doesn't touch it exactly. We can't guarantee that. It might actually be 0.9 or something, but these points they gave to us. So you need to make sure it goes through the point -4, 6 and the point 4, -4. When you find the line that goes through both of those points, then you need to check the table along with it. So let me go ahead and erase these so they're not distracting you anymore. And when you find the one equation that gives you the line, you're going to check the other equation with it and see if that gives you the table. And you're going to do that by checking the table trick we did earlier. So let's just try this one down here and say y equals -3/4 x minus 5. And I'll go ahead and do the other one so you can see it all together. -5/4 x plus 1. Okay, now I need to check and make sure, like this black line looks pretty close, but let's see if it includes the points I need. So I needed 4, see, I do have -4, 6, which I did need. The other one I need is 4, -4, so let's click, and it does have 4, -4. Okay, so that black line is the right one. Let's see if this one is my right table to match my line H. Because I know this one matches my graph, which is line J. So again, in the table, you can add whatever points you want. So look at what they gave you. They gave me -16. They gave me -8. They gave me -4. And they gave me 12. You're going to look at these and see if they match. -16 to 7, check. -8 to 1, check. -4 to -2, check. 12 to -14, check. I have found my answer. I know for a fact it is perfect and correct. And my answer has to be this one down here. Double check that it's the right one. Negative 3/4 x minus 5, yes. Negative 5/4 x plus 1, yes. My answer has to be J. Again, we just use the calculator to go through and figure those out. Okay, I've gone through enough examples with you. I would highly recommend you use some release STAAR tests to practice on that. To find those, you can just Google. Let's go to google.com and you just put in released STAAR test algebra EOC. And when you do that, it's going to bring you to this site, STAAR release test questions. You're going to come down here, right? It says this is the 2024 tests. All the tests are here, by the way. Every subject and everything that was given, if you ever want to look, you can look at 2023, 2022, 2021. I will tell you 21 and 22 have PDFs. What I mean by that is you come down here and you say algebra test form, and what it opens is actually going to be a PDF of the test. It's a little different. Oops, sorry. It's a little different with the others, because the other ones, if you go and look at 23 and 24, for example, I say high school, which is where you'll find algebra, and you say the Algebra 1 test form, it's actually going to log you into the practice test. These are kind of nice because you can use all the tools that are built in, so you can see your calculator and actually practice what it's like to use it all on one screen. It helps you get used to the format and the layout. It includes your notepad and all your other tools that would be in there. However, it does not save your work. So this is really best if you're going to sit in one sitting and do some practice, or sit and take the whole thing once. It will tell you your grade if you take it. But again, it doesn't save. So it'll keep asking every couple of minutes that you're idle, and it'll say, are you still there? And every time you want to look at another question, you have to go through and say, yes, I know I didn't answer it. So it takes a while to find the questions. Just some things for you to keep in mind. It is good for practicing the way the test is actually laid out. It is good for practicing your notepad and calculator and everything in one window, especially when you're working on a little tiny screen. You don't have different tabs or anything else for your calculator. It is good for replicating the way the test actually looks. It is not great for being able to flip through questions quickly, and for letting you take breaks. Like even if you go for a bathroom break or take a phone call or something else happens, it can log you out and then you lose your work and have to start over from scratch. So those are your options. Again, these are all found on, yes, I want to leave, the TEA website. And all I did was Google for STAAR released test questions, algebra EOC, and it brings up all these options. So I hope that is helpful. You're welcome to use any of these at any time. I would highly recommend the one that is linked to the agenda, which is 2024, because I believe we're going to use the 23 release test when we do some practice right before my STAAR test. All right, thanks. Have an awesome day. I hope that's been helpful.